think you even knew existed. It goes against everything Manifest Destiny teaches about Native Americans. And I want you to know this part of our history because people erased it. We'll get to that later on in the program. Erased it intentionally. That's an important part of it.
Most Americans have no idea that ancient cities with advanced architectures once dotted the ancient North American landscape. Director Kennedy has since coined a name for such places.
What I call hidden cities. I use the term because these were very big places. There were more people, we now know, in Cahokia, across from St. Louis, than there were in London or Rome.
America's history didn't begin with Christopher Columbus came over. There were ancient cities with advanced architectures all across North America. Did you know that? Hundreds of years before Columbus came. Let's think, oh, the Indians didn't start the land. No, not true. These were cities as large as any in the world at the time. London or Rome, they were metropolises. Archaeologists say they have found evidence of 200,000 actual cities of mound-like structures all across North America that were here long before Columbus. But we don't know anything about them. Why? Why? Especially when you hear what you're about to hear. I want to show you 3 incredible examples of these Indian mounds that were discovered. But before I show you this, I want to ask yourself, I want you to ask these questions. Was Jackson right? Andrew Jackson, Manifest Destiny, the beginning of that. Was he right that the Native Americans were savages? Or was Jefferson right that there was something going on here that we don't even understand? Maybe they were descendants of Egyptians or Jews, or maybe they were from Asia. Where were these people from? But they weren't savages.
All right, Jack.
Word. Yeah, man. So y'all heard it from the man Glenn Beck himself. We wanted to start that off with that right there, man, because we finna get into this Atlantis in America by Ivar, Zapp, and George Erickson. I got my man Corey Mayo, Ahuwa. I got my man Aboriginal Power and my man Enigma 23 on the panel, man. We finna break this thing down, probably the first couple of chapters, and present a couple of more things, man, to put all this mystery stuff in more perspective so we can start a whole new path with the studies and really elevate this thing to a whole nother level, man. So anybody want to say anything before we get it jumping off, man? This is real food. This is real truth. It's a heavyweight, you know. Let's get it going, man. Anybody got something to say?
Yeah, man. Shabbat Shalom. Kuti Mel, peace to everyone that's here and now. You know, we're gonna be breaking down, certain specific topic here, but we're gonna talk about a lot of things because it's all, it all links up together. And these mysteries, these things that they never teach us, that it's not in our school curriculums. We got to know about these things because you got to see how ancient and how great we were over here. Like, we're gonna show you, man. So tune in. I'm glad you're here.
I want to say peace and Aboriginal power. Halito, much bliss to everybody that's coming out on this Saturday night to join us on this heavyweight jam. And get ready to tune in, y'all. Get your pen and your papers out, y'all. Here we go.
Peace, y'all, the viewers out there. Water. That's my saying. Water, nourishment. Y'all about to get it right now. He just said, get them pens and papers out, because it's going to be a tough one right here. Hard body.
Word, man. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get it in with the book Atlantis in America. Since everybody really want to treat it as if it's a mystery, we finna see at least what the archaeologists Ivar, Zapp, and George Erickson have to say, who have PhDs and probably more by now uh, in the study of archaeology and anthropology. Um, show y'all from the top right quick. Let you know we ain't playing. Atlantis in America, navigators of the ancient world. Ivar, Zapp, and George Erickson. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Corey Mayo, man. He went through a lot to get this great literature from these guys, man, and actually had to do some extra work just to keep a hold of it. So we gonna really, really cherish and appreciate any given and hard work to find these type of studies, man. This type of content that pretty much is unbiased when it comes to science, because there are plenty of scientific theories that pretty much allow a lot of false accusations and false assumptions to carry along. And we got archaeologists and anthropologists, and you heard just from the video earlier, Glenn Beck himself telling you, hey, there's stuff that's going on here basically that you're not being told about. And of course, immediately he was, I think, fired or whatever for that. But some people don't care about representing a fraud society or a fraud existence period. Some people just gonna let you know what's real, man, and you just gotta know what to look for, and really put your heart towards it if you really want to find out what's going on. So I'm gonna start it out with a little bit of the introduction, just so you can kind of see where this is going. Of course, if you see any name or anything that you never heard of, feel free to look it up and do the extra research, because y'all know how we do. We like to read. I do personally myself, so I don't mind reading. I'm gonna try to do the first 3 paragraphs in the introduction, and then we're gonna jump into the first chapter to really see what Mr. Ivar Zapp, Ivar Zapp himself has to say with his own studies. So we got here the introduction, and it says, what truly is our past? In question, it says, antiquity is full of the praises of another antiquity, still more remote. That's by Voltaire. And it says, what truly is our future? In question, a crack in the teacup opens a lane to the land of the dead. W.H. Auden. So, it's all about really just putting your mind to it, man. And you got to learn how to, dodge certain hijacks and get away from, you know, stuff that don't make sense, man. And a lot of stuff really be right in your face. So we finna get it in. It says here in 1947, when Thor Heyerdahl led an expedition aboard a primitive balsa raft, the Kon-Tiki, across over 4,000 miles of the Pacific into successful landfall in Polynesia, science dismissed him as a lucky adventurer. In 1970, when Heyerdahl successfully navigated the Ra-2, a bundle reed raft from Africa to the Americas, archaeologists pronounced his theory of man's migration by sea as junk science and described his achievement as one man's bravery against incredible odds. But neither the Kon-Tiki nor the Ra expeditions were based on man's defiance of the seas. They were based on defiance of scientific dogma and on the concept that man was a marine migrator, willing and able to take the sea on sturdy rafts. One of Heyerdahl's sea ventures began in the Americas. The other culminated there. Both journeys, as well as hundreds of solo ventures by sailboats, rafts, and virtual bathtubs that soon follow, were facilitated by the steady push of the great ocean currents of the Atlantic and the Pacific currents that almost meet at the cylinder heart of the Americas. In 1979, when Ivar Zapp first realized that the great stone spears of the Diquis Delta in southern Costa Rica were the work and the record of ancient navigators, several compelling questions occurred to him. Who were the people that built them? Was Central America the site, if not the center, of an ancient seafaring civilization? If so, how has knowledge of this civilization been lost to known records? Plato wrote of Atlantis as a great island continent, a center of ancient knowledge with a navigational base at its capital city. The Americas form a great island continent with an ancient navigational base at its center. Plato also wrote of a golden age wherein myth and knowledge of the heavens were recreated in ordered city states on a peaceful earth. The spear builders constructed an orderly, even precise depiction of the heavens. Were they descendants of Atlantis? If so, how did these people relate to the nearby Olmecs and to the ancient Maya? Unlike the Europeans that discovered them, the Maya were able to construct great cities that existed for centuries without walls, without defensive fortifications, and with interconnecting roads and canals that beckoned visitors from other cities and other continents. The keen vision of the Mayan priest looking through an unpolluted atmosphere allowed them to view the heavens in 3 dimensions, a wonderful event that only sailors of the mid-Pacific can now experience. Were they the keepers of the knowledge of the Golden Age, an age of peace and mutual understanding? Question. Did the builders and the Mayan astronomers once interact with the peoples of the great megalithic sites? Among them, the builders of Cusco in Peru, Stonehenge in England, and the great pyramids of Egypt in question. This work will provide an approach to answering these questions. Who are we? What were our ancestors like? When did man achieve mastery of his environment, and how did he spread his dominance throughout this world? How did he relate his recent existence of the greater cosmos? These essential questions of who we have been and why we are what we are have been long answered by myth and by the oral traditions of many peoples of many diverse lands. By their telling, man was not insignificant. He was an essential player in the record of the universe. But since Aristotle, our Eurocentric world tradition of categories and materialistic science, has absolutely rejected any explanations on or answers provided by myth. With its animism, fabulous tales, and recountings of great cataclysms, while the tales and legends, the myths and have been discredited by our written history. That history itself is deeply flawed, stained by its repeated attempts to justify military and religious conquerors who burned libraries and usurped the real history of past empires. Okay, so keep breaking down. I'm gonna read a little bit more. Outside of questionable written records, conventional history has had only glimpses to go by, moments of insight into the long, most often lost record of mankind, yet motivated by a belief in Darwinian gradualism. 20th century historians and archaeologists alike have, for the most part, agreed on a single model, a defining paradigm for the emergence of civilized man. And quote, civilized. This paradigm depicts man as a land migrator, a wanderer over cold, bleak, and desolate expanses, a hunter seeking game while struggling against great adversities, until after many travails, he happened upon the fertile river valleys that provided his every want. Only then, according to this linear and simplistic model, did this fearful descendant of an aggressive ape become more than a mere survivor following a territorial imperative. In these river valleys, he discovered agriculture, which delivered bountiful food and a sedentary life. This in turn encouraged division of labor and inspired a system of cooperation under which man quickly prospered. He grew in wisdom and skills, and in short order, he founded great cities and civilization itself. This paradigm has held sway in our leading academic institutions, been taught to the masses, and universally accepted as unquestionable fact. So now, I know, that was a read, but hey, I had to do it because what he's saying is, how could a monkey do all these things and develop into what we are now? Basically letting you know he doesn't believe in the Darwin theory. And even Darwin himself later on, if we get there, I guess, you'll see that Darwin announced that he doesn't stand for false accusations or false uh assumptions. So, we'll get on through, man. The introduction itself is like 18 pages long. This right here is some pictures that they show on reconstructions of certain temples or certain things. This is supposed to be a reconstruction of the Temple of Marduk in Babylon, Mesopotamia, 600 BC. And this would be a reconstruction of the Piedras Negras site, conservatively dated 300 BC on the Usumacinta River, which now forms the border between Mexico and Guatemala. The concept of zero was known to the builders of the ziggurats in Sumer and Babylon, as well as to the builders of Mayan temples. But numbers in excess of 1,000,000 continued to confuse Western European thought until the 19th century. It says, although the similarities of design and construction between the step pyramids of the newly discovered American sites and the oldest known Mesopotamian sites were immediately evident to early investigators, the 16th century church quickly found proofs that they could not be related. Okay, so right. It's supposed to be reconstruction pictures or whatever, just showing y'all, we got talking about the Olmecs called pre-Mayans and proto-Mayans by archaeologists. Their likeness revealed that they weren't Mayan at all. There were many faces, many peoples in Mesoamerica long before Columbus. While most of the carved figures at Olmec sites, conservatively dated 1000 BC, were definitely Negroid, with kinky beards and braided hair. Some were definitely Semitic, possibly Phoenicians. So he let you know there that he agreed that Olmec heads are features of the so-called Aboriginal, known as the original, not the ab dash original, but the original. You know, we got here a little depiction of reed rafts. It says science and history have taught us that for ancient man, contact across the seas would have been impossible. But we now know that the Atlantic, with its steady winds and unfailing currents, is far easier to cross than the Mediterranean. As we also know that the reed rafts used by Egyptian and Sumerians in the fourth millennium BC would have been more fit to sail across any open sea than the awkward tall ships used by Columbus and his contemporaries. Balsa rafts and long dugout canoes that rowed close to the waves were used throughout the Pacific in recent centuries and for millennia before. Was there a meeting place between the Mediterranean and Oriental peoples? The thin strip of land that connects the two halves of the American continent contains ancient stelae carved with a variety of faces, from Chinese to Phoenician, in a place that united the great ocean currents. It would have been the logical place to unite diverse cultures and astronomical knowledge. If ancient man was a navigator, he would have repeatedly encountered Central America. The prevailing currents would have left him no choice in this matter. So, with that right there being said, we know okay, anciently, if people, was doing this was make sense, far as these statues and stones and artifacts or whatever looking like negroids, regardless if they had slanted eyes or bug eyes. You know what I'm saying? It's negroid people. You know what I'm saying? And you still see that in America till this day. You'll see that in your own family for real. So I mean, either way, we know, I don't have any Chinese people in my family, you know what I'm saying, or Asian, Japanese or whatever, but I got a few cousins that have the slanted eyes and stuff like that. And that could be maybe some gene or hereditary thing, but I think that's just a look that was already over here anyway. You know what I'm saying? Complete diverse look of people due to the different type of tropical areas and different vegetations and fruits and stuff like that, and the ecosystems from the waters are even different in different lands of the Americas. So that creates a different type of mold that would create a different type of habitat for anything to look, at least adapt to. You know what I'm saying? Ain't necessarily mutation for me. I go with more of, just adapting. So you got Ivar Zapp in the Diquis Delta. So this is the first chapter. Anybody had anything they wanted to say on that? What we just read though, man. I mean, I don't want to jump like I know I am. I know I get long winded. Uh, I guess I'll go ahead and say,
Get into the meat. Go ahead. Feed
all
them.
right. It say in 1940, the United Fruit Company was clearing the Diquis Delta region of southwest Costa Rica of its jungle covering to establish a banana plantation when workers happened upon what would later prove to be vast astronomical gardens. They first found the upper parts of huge stone balls, but when the curious workers dug the surrounding soil out at some considerable expense of energy, they discovered they had uncovered great spears, some measuring over 9 feet in diameter, and later found to weigh as much as 20 tons. These great balls had once been held aloft by a series of supporting mounds and had been surrounded by stone statues and stelae. Over time, most of the colossal spears sunk into the ground, some as much as 2 meters below the surface. The spears caught the interest of Doris Stone, an archaeologist and the wife of the general manager of the United Fruit Company in Costa Rica. Stone in 1949 brought the spears to the attention of Harvard archaeologist Samuel K. Lothrop while he was in Costa Rica examining other sites. Intrigued by Stone's reports, Lothrop traveled to the Diquis Delta, where he was amazed not only by the size of the granite spears, but even more impressed by the precision with which massive granite blocks had been carved into perfect spears, having the same diameter and circumference when measured from any point on the spear. Even the largest were found to be spherical to within a few hundredths of an inch. Lothrop, an established authority on Peruvian and Central American archaeology, had come to Costa Rica to study the ceramics of the Corotega Indians. But there was nothing that Lothrop had encountered in his investigations of the Corotega, then thought to be the earliest known organized culture in what is now Costa Rica, that suggested the abilities to construct so large and so precise a megalith. And there were hundreds of these mysterious spears in the Diquis region, and hundreds more, if not thousands, in the surrounding mountains. Since the Corotega lacked the technology to build them, and since there was no known presence in Mesoamerica of an earlier or more sophisticated culture, the spears became an enigma. Lothrop declared that the site and the spears were out of context. They simply did not fit within Mesoamerican context known to Americanist archaeologists. And since the established theories that dated pre-Columbian Costa Rican culture could not be questioned, the spears themselves had to be dismissed. Now, so since it outnumbered, well, not outnumbered, but outdated or whatever, the Corotega Indians, or what they wanted to date, that group of Indians or that, tribe or whatever, they chose to dismiss the whole spear. And this is why it's not being taught in pretty much any type of educational system. This is why America isn't really in the study of education, because you start getting into, okay, well, how is all this here, and we not knowing about this. But let's keep going. Lothrop made no attempt to date the spears, although he expressed the opinion that they were much older than surrounding sites. He took accurate measurement of the spears and mapped their layouts and their arrangements in groups. Upon inquiry, he managed to correlate the spears to local folklore and myth that the spears were related to the phenomena that takes place in the sky. A few Indians told him that the spears had something to do with the cyclical movement of the sun, moon, and stars. Okay, so this is a picture of the spear right here. I think this is one that was relocated or something like that. But it says a spear that has been removed from its original site and sits on a lawn in Palmer's, Sur, Costa Rica. Another right there. Say, after Lothrop's brief study of the spears presented in archaeological remains of the Diquis Delta of Costa Rica, few archaeologists outside Costa Rica showed any interest in these great spears. When their evidence was first presented in an issue of Natural History magazine, 1955, that's over 50 years ago, declared that it is thought that the civilization that manufactured these spears must have been highly advanced. But because they did not fit into their,
Jack, hey Jack,
yeah,
let me show them the spears while you're reading. So
okay,
like, yeah,
go
cause I
ahead.
got them on the, yeah, I got them on the thing. So let me, I'm already sharing.
Are you already showing it? Okay.
But yeah, make sure it's showing on YouTube.
All right. It should be. They should be able to see him. Word, word.
No, it's not showing yet.
They showing it. Oh yeah, they showing. They showing.
Okay, good.
Word, word.
No, it's not showing yet. I got
Okay. It say but because they did not fit into their preconceived context and pretext, archaeologists in general avoiding dealing with these megaliths. Okay, so it's telling you, because it wasn't in the context of what the normal study was, they chose to avoid it. A few academics and researchers declared that the spears were the work of the native Boruca Indians, another culture that never showed any ability to construct such megaliths, and casually gave them a probable date of from the 9th to the 12th century AD. Over the years, the spears, hidden in the midst of a large banana plantation in a remote and steamy jungle, lay forgotten by all but the occasional looters who found a way to truck them to the gardens and lawns of wealthy Costa Ricans living in the Central Highlands. Through uncertainty and neglect, an important archaeological discovery was categorized as an enduring enigma and abandoned to the banana fields. Okay, letting you know, man, they're not trying to pay attention. They wasn't trying to pay attention to what they was finding over here in Costa Rica. When Ivar Zapp entered the picture, the spears had become an all but forgotten local riddle. Fascinated by the spears, Ivar, while teaching in the School of Architecture at the University of Costa Rica in 1981, took his students on a field trip to the steamy Diquis Delta. After an examination of those spears still in situ, he proposed a series of interesting questions to his students. Who built them? How were they built? How were they transported to a place so far from any rock quarries? Okay. How were the other spears found high in the coastal mountains of Costa Rica? Possibly moved there? Okay. Some good questions. Then Ivar asked his students to ignore these questions and instead concentrate on another. Since so much thought and effort had gone into the construction, polishing, and geometric perfection of the spears, what could have been the function of these megaliths? Okay, what were they for? So his students, though fascinated by the objects, enigmas in the jungle mist, had no ready answer. But then neither did Ivar. His field trip was meant to be an exercise in awareness of architectural function. But the questions Ivar raised to his students came to dominate his own thoughts. What could the function of the spears have been? Okay, they're trying to figure out what were these spears used for. Ivar had long been interested in the work of John Mitchell, whose orientation of the ley lines of Stonehenge and other sites in Britain pointed to ancient knowledge of the Earth's integral position. Under the heavenly bodies, Mitchell's investigation established the relationship of the Celts through their architectural constructions not only to solar and astral entities, but also to other ancient structures in Giza in Egypt, to the Etruscans, and to the builders of Baalbek in Phoenicia. Could something similar have occurred in the far distant past in Costa Rica? Question. So this is a picture here, um, kind of like configuration of the spears of Costa Rica. It says the layout of the spears as found and diagrammed by S.K. Lothrop. Spears E and F are now in Museo Nacional in San Jose, Costa Rica. So E and F, which is on the left, those two are in Museo Nacionals, San Jose, in Costa Rica. So, all right. So, y'all see, he really just going in on how, they trying to see what the spears are about. And it says right here, they start getting into the directions and how, matter of fact, I'm gonna read this right here. I'm gonna go ahead and read this one. It says Professor Zapp and his student first studied the layout of the spears that remain in situ. Then they consulted the layouts made 42 years earlier by Lothrop. They found that in most cases, the stones were arranged in groups of threes, forming a triangular configuration. Ivar noticed that an axis line formed between two major groups of the spears was oriented to the magnetic North Pole, indicating that the builders had a knowledge of the magnetic compass. Okay, so that's why I want to go ahead and read that, man. I know we got some North Pole people out there, man. They might want to try to get into some of this Ivar Zapp information on the spears. So it says Ivar on intuition then took a Mercator atlas and projected the directional lines implied by the layout of the spears. The implied lines of the spears missed contact with other significant sites by as much as 400 miles. But the Mercator atlas, long used by European navigators, is flat, and the Earth is a sphere. Using a globe and consulting maps that reflect the dimension, Ivar found that the 19 degrees southwest inclination of the line that intersected spears E and F in the figure that we just seen projected from the Palmar Sur site in the Diquis Delta leads to Cocos Island in the Galapagos Islands, and then to Easter Island. In fact, smaller but similarly perfect spears have been found on Easter Island, but these spears have been moved. So if they once pointed back to the Americas, this access to knowledge is now lost. The directional line implied by spears D and F project a line that followed to the northeast leads to the Straits of Gibraltar. or Gibraltar. And if projected southwest, leads to the Marquesas. In another group, the axis leads to the Great Pyramid at Giza. In another, it leads to Stonehenge. In every case, the megaliths of Costa Rica pointed to great megaliths of distant lands and islands. Okay, so this right here finna show you how, okay, they were found in how these spears they found was lining up to where they found in Costa Rica. It says the lines of spears E and F projected from the Palmer Sur site and the Diquis Delta lead directly to Cocos Island, the Galapagos Islands, and then to Eastern Islands, as you see here on the right. See what I'm saying? It's showing you. If you look at the, go where Mexico at and go down a little bit.
Bro, you gotta show them your screen. They're seeing my screen, so they can
Oh
see
yeah,
that.
my bad. Dang, you're right about that. Forgot about that. Okay.
Yeah, because that's important. Show them the triangle thing too.
Right. I forgot I was sharing your screen. I'm glad you reminded me. My bad, people. Yeah, let's go back up so y'all can see. This is the what they were saying. They was talking about E and F that they found. Says here the layout of the spears as found and diagrammed by Lothrop, S.K. Lothrop. Spears E and F are now in the Museo Nacional in San Jose, Costa Rica. So these right here, E and F, they moved them, but they was showing you how they basically kind of line up with other stones that they were finding, and that's why I was reading just now. So I'm gonna go back down, and this right here is showing you the lines of spears E and F projected from the Palmer Sur site and the Diquis Delta lead directly to Cocos Island, the Galapagos Islands, and then to Easter Islands. So right here you can see, you know what I'm saying, if you what a line that is showing you the points is reaching through each spear point. You know what I'm saying? So and D, which is below, is about to show adjusted to fit a flat map in the Pacific. Land comprises less than 0.1% of the total area. The probability that each implied line would strike an important island group by chance was incredibly remote. That the implied lines would also point directly toward known megalith sites such as Easter Island, Stonehenge, Malta, and the Great Pyramid in Egypt were beyond any chance probability. Ivar then knew he had made the first step toward an important discovery. So what you about to see here is basically showing you how where you seeing the lines coming from and where they directing to, those are lines that they found spears. So you start at each line and go to the where they all pointing to, which is the center, which is right here in Costa Rica. This is like giving you like a centerfold direction. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so far these are the spears that they found, and they've even moving some of the spears that they found, and they said they found thousands, and they all have an axis point coming right here to Costa Rica. So if I mean, you tell me, I mean, if they ancient, okay, we just read they didn't really want to deal with them. So when Ivar did his study on them and traced down where they found them at and connected a centerfold point, a nice dot to where they all meet, it's right there where Costa Rica is. So my thing is, uh, would this be a center spot? on a, on a land terrain or something. I don't know. I'm just taking a wild guess. That's not nothing that's so scholarly yet. But right now, from what I'm seeing, this is what I can see. Anybody want to comment on that?
I just want to, like so like you're saying how they didn't want to bother with the research and everything. I know, this is important, because they say Atlantis is a myth. You gotta understand Atlantis was the whole Americas, that it was big, when Plato describes it, he's talking about bigger than Libya and Europe and Asia, man. He's talking about bigger than all those continents. So he's talking about the Americas, with its islands and its different city states and all that. So like Glenn Beck mentioned earlier, he's talking about Manifest Destiny. Manifest Destiny was written how to expand U.S. The corporation, right, and how to take land from the Indians. It basically said anything they find that doesn't fit with history, or that doesn't go with what they want to teach or manifest, right? That's why they call it Manifest Destiny.
Right.
We would consider savage and not suitable. So anything that was found, like any Hebrew thing or anything that looks Roman, anything looks Egyptian, anything that from the old world that doesn't fit with what they want to, teach and everything, they ruled it out, and that was written as law almost. And so that is what was basically used for the textbooks and everything when they're explaining history to us, because they used Manifest Destiny's way of perspective, and that's how they wrote the textbooks, and that's why we don't get none of this information and correlation, and that's why it's a mystery. But you guys gotta understand, mystery means my story. Anything they say, yo, that's a mystery, they're just talking about you.
That's
They don't
right.
want you to know. They're talking about history. They're talking about his story, his story. So you gotta, it's about you. It's very important. All right, and I just wanted to say that. I also, I wanted to correlate. I don't know if I can, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to correlate, like a video I had that I've done about I got it right here. Let me share the screen. It's basically about Atlantis as well. It's called Atlantis: The Antediluvian World by Ignatius Donnelly. All right, so are you showing my screen
Yeah, I
right
got
now?
it on yours. Yeah, it's on yours.
Okay, hold on. Just showing it again. All right, so can you see the Atlantis right now? Antediluvian World.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, so this is another book, right? This is one of the most famous researchers for Atlantis, Ignatius Donnelly. The reason is because he's a scholarly known person in that circle, and back in those times, 1800s. And, he uses a lot of evidence to correlate what he's saying, why he's saying Atlantis, where he thinks Atlantis is. So let's just get a little bit about that, just to correlate with what you're reading. We go back to your book. All right.
Let's get it.
Book right here is called Atlantis, the Antediluvian World by Ignatius Donnelly. This was from New York, Harper Brothers, Franklin Square in 1882. All right, so I just want to show you maybe this is not such a myth. All right, so let's look into this. It says Atlantis, chapter 1, the purpose of the book. It says this book is an attempt to demonstrate several distinct and novel propositions. These are that once existed in the Atlantic Ocean opposite the mouth of the Mediterranean Sea a large island, which was the remnant of an Atlantic continent, and known to the ancient world as Atlantis. That description of this island given by Plato is not, as has been long supposed, fable, but variable history. All right, it's not fable. That Atlantis was the region where man first rose from a state of barbarism to civilization. If you've seen my corn videos, if you haven't, I invite you to go watch them. We see that agriculture helped the first civilizations begin. Agriculture, and it was corn. That's how we can trace corn way back 10,000 years, domesticated by the Native Americans. All right, so this correlates with that. Also, point four, he says that it became in the course of ages a populous and mighty nation, from whose overflowing the shores of the Gulf of Mexico, the Mississippi River, the Amazon, the Pacific coast of South America, all the way to the Pacific coast of South America. What's there? Peru, right? The Mediterranean, the west coast of Europe and Africa, the Baltic, the Black Sea, and the Caspian were populated by civilized nations. Point five, that it was the true antediluvian world, the Garden of Eden, the gardens of the Hesperides, the Elysian fields. the gardens of Alcinous, the Mesophalos, the Olympus, the Asgard of the traditions, and of the Asian nations, representing a universal memory of a great land where early mankind dwelt for ages in peace and happiness. All right, America, right? We're talking about reaching all the way to the Mississippi River, right? That the gods, the goddesses of the ancient Greeks, the Phoenicians, the Hindus, and the Scandinavians were simply the kings, queens, and heroes of Atlantis, right? Hijacked from the indigenous people of America. All these gods, right? They talk about where did they originate? And the acts attributed to them in mythology are confused recollection of real historical events. That the mythology of Egypt and Peru represent the original religion of Atlantis, which was sun worship according to them, right? And there was sun worship by some of the tribes that were in America. But we also know that eventually Jehoshua and King David drove some of these sun worshiping tribes out of Jerusalem and Hebron and all these places in the Bible. So yes, it is correlating with what we've read in the Torah. All right, man. So yeah, I just wanted to end the day. I want to just show that there's a lot of research going on by a lot of different people that is correlating a lot. This is just two books. We got other books, and basically he's letting you know all the way from the Mississippi down to South America. That includes Central America, and we're talking about Costa Rica right now because it is known as a navigational point. We're surrounded by the Caribbean and the Pacific side. It's we got the Incas and the Mayas in the north and the Incas in the south. So it was a culture, it was a transition spot. A lot of people went up and down, and they had to cross all these countries in Central America. So it was a melting pot. As Ivan, or the author of the book, Jack's reading, says, it was like New York at that time. That's where different people were just going and navigating. And so it does correlate a lot. So I just wanted to show that video, and we can get back to the reading if you like, just so people can see it's not just one person talking about this. It's actually something. And those points that he talks about in that book, in Ignatius Donnelly, he actually goes in depth into them. So if you guys want to go read that, he has a lot of correlation proof why he says that, so you guys can see.
That's right.
And talk about mythology. We just did the the Anubis video. Nobody's watched it. You can go see it. That's the Shalot god here in Mexico. You can find all their mythology, like they're saying. It was hijacked from Atlantis, because we know that Egypt and Babylon, Samaria just started out of nowhere. Even anthropologists or historian will tell you that they just started out of nowhere, and they'll call it a legacy. They have no proof of how it became so civilized. Talking about language, written language, all that, the hieroglyphics, everything. There's no process to it. It just started out of nowhere, and that's because it originated on this side.
That's right, man.
I just wanted to add in, when you was talking about as far as the Costa Rica being the center part, a navigation point. You got to think about this too. None of that land is occupied. From Mexico going down to Central America, even South America is occupied by America.
Right.
Panama. So we know when the enemy comes in, they try to say about, it's a shortcut by just getting that canal, but you got to think about it. You got all that untapped hidden metaphysic sculptures, and information and all of that. So why is your presence really there? If you're the ones that's moving it. I want to say about that.
Can I? And I would just like to go off right off of that. Like a lot of these stories that you hear, like what I'm showing right now on this screen, you see this. This is ancient artifacts that they found in America that's depicting a clean-shaven Indian with Negroid features, right? That's holding the head of a giant and proceeding in this picture. So it remains that it could possibly be the David and Goliath story, right? So as we go down and we look at all these different various artifacts, and we get down, and it said that the defensiveness of the statement surprised me. I hadn't mentioned Egyptian colonies. I had only asked for an opinion. The purposity's ideas and the analyst had derived was his own. I quite agree, I said. The Egyptians didn't colonize Latin America, perhaps the Atlanteans did. So, you
Yeah,
know,
correlation right there. That's a good book actually. Good thing you're reading that. That's called the Lost Outpost of Atlantis, and
absolutely.
that's those plates you're showing. That's from Father Crespi's collection. It's in Ecuador. They found all these golden plates of
Mm,
looks like Assyrian, Roman, Egyptian, Babylonian. All the stuff we see on that side right here. They found that.
Yeah, it goes to how where this Mesoamerica and Roman culture popped up out of nowhere because it was stole, propagated over there to correspond with history. You know what I'm saying? So, with they written history, which is made up, you know that, because it ain't my story.
that's
See
right.
what I'm saying?
I mean, you got to picture it. We're talking about a civilization that existed that had a lot of, technology, knowledge, science, math. We find it all over here. Just a little bit of research, archaeology, and anthropology. You'll see that it's all over the Americas. High science, high technology, high knowledge. Just the architecture of the buildings and all that. It's not that what you call that concrete that the Romans used or whatever that you find over there in Giza. If you guys
Right,
watch UB2 News YouTube channel, he exposed that, man, and that
right,
it's not like that.
right.
We're gonna get into that too today. Our
Right.
AP
So
was
y'all
done.
just be tuned in. We're gonna definitely be touching in on more of these Atlantis books. So we'll probably be breaking them down simultaneously on different channels, giving y'all different outlooks and always corresponding with one another, whether it's from Michael Wingate or Ivar Zapp or whatnot. So we just gonna keep dropping this knowledge, correlating, putting the bridge together to making it clear for you guys to see that Atlantis is America. Atlantis was part of America. The part that we think is Atlantis was only just a small part that's covered up now. You see what I'm saying? And with tips sticking out that we call islands.
Yep, straight up.
So if you just take a look and see all these little islands that make this unique pattern on the western, I mean on the eastern side of America towards the Atlantic side. You'll see this. So I just want to show this to correlate, and we can get back to this.
Yeah, I mean, just one last thing. We're right in the middle of Lemuria and Atlantis, and you think we weren't inhabited as well and had megalithic cities and civilizations. We're right in the middle of those two ancient sunken lands, or that are covered up right now. Atlantis went all the way, like AP saying, all the way, like even to the Azores, the Madeiras, the Cape Verde Islands. Those are the top of Atlantis still. That's why they knew about it because it stretched that far, and that's the part that actually is down, but not all of it. Like AP saying, went down. Not all of it.
That's right, man. And really, what we really gonna figure out as we read along, man, is really how even in the southeast region, like you were saying, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, even up to about Tennessee and Kentucky, man, you got civilizations of mounds, that's still being discovered. And once they, do full excavations, they finding out that these were cities or, certain ceremonial sites and such. So right here, I'm gonna jump into the knotted cords that we have a depiction of here, and this is by of course, Atlantis in America. For those who may be just tuning in, Tim Severin demonstrates the use of the camel and knotted cord in a National Geographic magazine article in July 1982. 13 years later, in an article on Maya murals at Bonampak, National Geographic magazine, February 1995, knotted cords extending from the mouth believed by the present authors to be a vestige of degenerated naval traditions, are described as examples of barbaric torture and ritual savagery. So he let you know that, that's what they depicted it to be, but we finna find out. It says, and we finna get here. It says, let me get to it right quick. Okay, we got another one right here. It's showing you, it say, if Polaris appeared above the height of the camel, the sailor had ventured north of his destination. It says, if Polaris appeared below, the sailor was too far south. If the North Star aligned with the rectangle, the ship and destined port were on the same latitude and the sailor was on course. So it's giving you a depiction there of how they used it. So I'm gonna read a little bit of this. It says, thus Ivar realized that he would need to look beyond the published archaeological records for traces of ancient navigators, launching an investigation that would dominate the next 14 years of his life. Ivar pursued the question through an examination at actual sites of the known archaeological record, reappraised to include the possibility of navigation as the means by which man's ideas migrated from one continent to another. On assignment, one of Ivar's students, Humberto Caro, found evidence of the use of an ancient sextant used by Arab navigators that was described in detail in the 13th century manuscript that became the basis for the classic The 1001 Arabian Nights. Through the character Sinbad, okay, now and this right here is an ancient depiction of the same camel cord and knot string use. And Corey Mayo, I think you said they got this artifact in Costa Rica. Yeah, it says right here, figure with knotted cords extending from their mouths, often tethered to rectangular shapes, have been found throughout the Diquis Delta region of Costa Rica. Surely these were navigational instruments, not torture devices. R.A. Jarrah's Boy, Ancient Egyptians and Chinese in America. That was a book that he published. Notes that in both ancient America and Egypt, guys are depicted with the odd characteristics of a double twisted rope issuing from their mouths. Another similarity is the Egyptian custom of placing small strips of papyrus with the dead and the Mexican custom of placing bunches of paper with dead. Two, obvious both people had a belief in the power of the written word to transcend earthly life, but it could not transcend nor alone survive the burnings and desecration of less enlightened cultures that followed. All right, so back to the narrative.
So that image, that image right there, it's found all over Costa Rica. In gold, we have everything. Almost every artifact here is made like gold was highly valued here, but not because of money. Because money really was the cacao. The cacao bean was used as money. Gold was just used because of its power and stuff, right? Because it's just one of the strongest metals. That's why they put it in computers. It helps out in a lot of ways, not only just to look good. But this figure actually, they tell us they don't know what it is. They tell us, like you said, it's a sacrifice or somebody torturing somebody. Man, they're talking about I don't know what they're talking about. They got creative minds, but they don't know shit. So. They're basically telling us it's the Mothman, and they make up all kinds of stuff. I was telling Jag earlier, but yeah, this is found all over Costa Rica, and they actually have ones with the pieces, the square pieces, actually hanging from them. So this is like the actual instrument they were using.
That's right. And what you say they tried to call them in the
Mothman.
Yeah, it's a legend. It's actually Mothman is always usually referenced around bad luck and shit like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's crazy, man. All right, so I'm gonna back to this. It say through the character Sinbad, the sailor, the tales contained in this classic probably depict the adventures of many Sinbads, stretching back through hundreds of sailings over thousands of years. It was the use on these voyages of a rectangular sextant called a kamal by the Arabs that caught Caro's attention. The kamal was made of two wooden rectangles united by a long knotted cord. Each knot on the cord represented the latitude of a known port. Northern ports were represented by knots closest to the rectangle. Ports closer to the equator were represented by knots that permitted a fuller extension of the arm, effectively lowering the sighting latitude of the kamal. By holding the knot representing a port in his teeth and extending the kamal with its edge on the horizon and pointing it at Polaris, the accomplished navigator could determine his position relative to the latitude of his destination. So they describe right there on how they was using certain points off the card or the kamal to figure out their location and where they needed to go and how they needed to get back where they were going. Is what struck Ivar and his student Humberto was that the knotted rope extending from the mouth was very similar to a repeated motif on pottery and gold pendants that Lothrop had found in association with the spears of the Diquis Delta. So they found these items and these artifacts by the spears also in gold. Lothrop characterized these numerous items as representing snakes coming out of the mouth of deity. But Ivar had believed them to be simply units of measure. Again, Ivar had questioned their function. Now he felt he had an answer. If his hypothesis was correct, it was a geographically large answer. This same symbolism, the knotted cords coming out of the mouth, has also been depicted in pre-Inca burial sites in Peru and on stelae in the archaeological sites of Copan in Honduras and Bonampak and Yaxchitlan and in the Yucatan. In India, similar depictions have been found in pre-Aryan sites in the Indus Valley and among the followers of Shiva, the Hindu god of destruction. All right, bear with me, y'all.
Hey,
It
can you
says this.
resend when you get a chance? Resend Chief the link, brother. My bad. Go ahead.
All right, I resent it to him. I don't know. I don't know. He must got. I might need his email again. I might be sending it to the wrong email. Um. So drop his email in the back, and I do it whenever I break off from the read. This discovery only made Ivar more determined to find other instruments that could serve a common function among diverse ancient naval cultures. Again, Humberto Caro came up with the key evidence. He found an article among the reports to the 23rd Congress of Americanists held in Costa Rica in 1952 by Thor Heyerdahl, which explained the technique of sailing balsa rafts against the currents and against the wind. In the article, Heyerdahl shows how the ancient Peruvians were able to achieve this counter current navigation by use of removable centerboards called guara, functioning like keels. but in use in the Americas for thousands of years before the keel was invented. 7 to 12-foot long guaras were inserted between balsa logs and lifted or lowered to achieve the desired tacking effect. And that's major. Centerboard navigation in great rafts that carried from 50 to 75 men and 20 to 40 tons of cargo was in wide use at the time the first Spanish came to Peru. When Francisco Pizarro's fleet reached the northern coast of the Inca Empire, they encountered a whole flotilla of balsa rafts. This is a picture right here of one of the rafts that the Incas used. Picture drawing, whatever. It say, well, I left on it. It say, yeah, it say, coast of the Inca Empire, they encountered a whole flotilla of balsa rafts carrying Inca soldiers. The Spanish were surprised by the number of rafts and by their great size, almost equal to their own caravels. But to the Spaniards, the most amazing thing was that the rafts were moving swiftly toward them against the current and against the wind. Curious, Pizarro managed to draw alongside several of the rafts. The Incas were as curious about the Spanish and allowed them to board. The Spaniards, initially pretending to be friendly, boarded the vessel, threw 11 of the crew overboard, left 4 to the raft, and took 2 men and 3 women prisoners to be trained as interpreters. Okay, describing a pirate takeover. Pizarro's contemporaries recorded the secret of balsa raft navigation. Although they didn't fully understand it at the time, Pizarro and his men were told of balsa journeys along the entire coast of South America. They were also given directions on how to sail to Easter Island and on to Polynesia. But Pizarro had little interest in selling techniques or directions to Polynesia or any obscure or fancied and distant islands. Through his captive interpreters, he learned that the reason for the great number of balsa rafts full of soldiers he had encountered was that the Incas were involved in a bloody civil war. Pizarro's quest was for El Dorado, the legendary city of gold. Says the Civil War gave him the opportunity to use the Inca people against one another, utilizing the high esteem conferred on him, that of the returning god Viracocha. Pizarro organized an army of Peruvians deeply angry at the Inca regime or the Inca regime. His expedition, fortified by thousands of Indians, pushed inland high into the Andes to capture Cusco, the Incan capital, a city covered with gold. Okay. Within 2 years, the Incan Empire fell to the Spanish. Centerboard sailing on balsa rafts survived for a few generations, then was all but forgotten. But historic accounts, most written by chroniclers accompanying Pizarro and other Spanish conquistadors, remain. And wooden guaras, some carbon-14 dated to thousands of years before Pizarro's conquest of Peru, are still being found in the deserts of Peru.
Yeah, it's crazy. So talking about Peru and Cusco and talking about gold,
Right.
they also mentioned that Atlantis had temples with the walls all full of gold, the ceilings, everything, outside, everything. And Cusco was like that. The whole city of Cusco had gold all over it. There was temples that had gold and diamonds and rubies all over the wall. That's how the Spanish describe. Marco Polo describes the temple of Prester John the same way in the land that he went to travel, and that was in America as well. And so Cusco, people don't know, we're relating that to the real ancient Jerusalem. We ain't talking about religion. We're talking about a real place where actual ancient people they call Hebrew lived and had their main temples. And that was right there in Cusco. All right, so I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, man. And like you say, man, being described as gold, and Cusco is known to be a highly recommended spiritual site, man. And I'm trying to make it to all these sites, man, where I'm trying to see all the ancient cities and temples and you know civilization areas, man. I'm trying to see it all, man. So right here though, man, I scrolled down to this city, man, that's actually described, man. It's in Cocteau, a city built in the configuration of a ship. And yeah, man, I just AP, man, you what you think about that, bro?
Actually, man, it looks similar to what you will see on a lot of these Bibles, or what you see maybe artists will draw of Noah's Ark and other things like that, man. When they tell you they put two of each animal and all these other things, and a whole family populated the world from this place, which they claim was a ship, could have been, which I think was derived from this city, which is built like a ship. You feel me? And could have populated large areas around it. You see what I'm saying? And they
Right.
turned this realistic story into a metaphor or mythology. You see what I'm saying? So that's the only place I know that can store hella two of each animal. See what I'm saying? And some people, a
Exactly.
whole town.
Yeah. How you gonna have all that on a boat? It makes sense if you find something that was depicted in an ancient as an ancient city in the shape of a ship, and you
Right.
actually go there and you finding all these different type of animals and people. You know what I'm saying?
Now you can see the word palenque there too, right? As you was mentioning earlier, and we have Palenque, the city in Guatemala or in the Yucatan, wherever it is, and we also know that the Indians or the so-called Negro, right? Um, when he escaped, and they had these places in South America, especially they called palenques. Those was like places where they fortified themselves, like a shelter. That's what really the word palenque means. And it was a lot of, supposedly, when you go read about palenques, supposedly a lot of the runaway slaves went to the palenques. They don't even mention it. They're just talking about they went to the palenques, a lot of runaway slaves and the Indians, they say. But that's what the word palenque means.
That's right. That's it. So we'll dive into this.
Yeah, man, that's straight flame.
Um, it says here. It says the local people were apparently indicating two things to Columbus. First, a people different in customs to their own existed on the Pacific coast in southern Costa Rica who called themselves the Siguare. Second, that the Siguare possessed naval equipment, gold objects, and a naval culture similar to that which Columbus seemed to represent. It said these people, the Siguaranese, were never found, although recent finds of gold pendants associated with navigational tools in the Diquis Delta near present day Golfito, about a 10-day walk from Limon, and about which the sea forms an arc, indicate that such a naval culture did exist. The great spears of the Diquis Delta had apparently been long buried, but it is obvious that even as late as the time of Columbus, that region was held in high esteem as the center of a naval culture. It has recently been determined by the authors that the site described in the Diquis Delta was no ordinary naval culture, but a highly advanced ancient astro navigation university. Okay, so it's going in more, man, about how Columbus. So I'm finna read right here. It say motivated typically by the quest for gold, Coronado was also seeking a naval passage between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Under his command, the Paraguas began exploring the major rivers of the area, looking for a passage to the Caribbean. Between the mouths of the Diquis and the Sierpe rivers, Coronado encountered the fortified city of Coctu, which lay in the Diquis Delta. Coctu, which is the city shaped like a boat that we just showed y'all, could have best been described as a city state, laid out in the form of a ship. Coronado's description of Coctu, relating an ordered construction and gardens of great beauty, may well have been a description of the home of the Siguares. His admiration for the city, which he described as beyond comparison to anything ever seen by the Spaniards, was all the more exceptional since he had lost several men in his efforts to subdue Coctu. With the aid of the Panamanian Indians, Coronado and his conquistadors eventually gained the surrender of the city of 33,600 people. Although its probable location is known, no trace of it remains today. After the surrender of Coctu, Coronado and his men encountered a great flooding of the Sierpe and the Keys rivers.
Just, I just wanna. I'm sorry, man. I just want to say right there because we talked. As I was mentioning earlier, mystery, right? So they say they don't know what happened to the remains or the city or the people. So
Right.
Cortez invaded and they had to surrender, right? So who were these people, right? Man, we know these were because if you've seen from, I believe, the Pacific Native Americans by Bancroft, a famous historian, he went all up and down the whole Central America and everything. He describes the Aboriginals there as so-called Negroes, right? So we're talking about you got enslaved, you got sent to the West Indies, you got sent to South America, you got sent to North America, you got sent to the South, you got sent all over. And that they're saying, oh, it's a mystery. We don't know there's no trace of the remains, so they don't want you to know. I mean, there's no remains. 33,000 people. All right, they all disappeared, right?
I know, right?
Sorry, man, just go.
Yeah, I mean, that's real though, man. Shit, yeah, man. That's why, man. That's why I say, man. I'm glad we got to connect, man. Because I mean, you got hands on because you down there, you in that area, man. So you can get the feel of the real energy. You gonna find the missing link. You know what I'm saying? You get to dodge the hijacks.
Right. And that's what it's all about, man. So you already know.
Word.
They keep lying. It's up to us to keep getting this information and bringing out the truth and forcing them to eat their words and that they trying to force us to eat because it's full of shit.
That's right.
I mean, so I mean, we're talking about ancient navigators. We're talking about like Phoenicians and stuff. We're talking about ancient cultures that were navigating the whole plane, and coming out of here, being a base over here. This is not the only correlation we have to this being the old world, but this is a big part of it. And it's not a legend. Plato's never wrote Atlantis as a legend when he was writing about it. He never said anything like that. And he'll let you know when he's describing it that they couldn't cross over to Atlantis in their time because it wasn't navigable. So because of whatever had happened to that part of America, or quotes Atlantis, when it would happen, I guess it was impassable. It was like muddy. He describes the waters, the ocean being muddy and everything. It was impassable. It was like a barrier. They couldn't come over here. It was like a barrier the Most High put there.
That's right.
Yeah, and then it got, they were able to, and they knew what the hell was over here. Columbus knew about all this Atlantis correlation, all this. He had, you know, he knew somebody in one of the west coast islands of Africa. He was living there with his wife, his mother-in-law. They took in somebody that actually, they took in his father's, his father-in-law had taken in somebody that had basically shipwrecked, and he was from America. And he had told them, where he had come from and everything. And he had that story. That's in historical books. All this stuff before Columbus sailed. He was able to convince, the king and queen, because he had a good something to back him up. He had a lot of things to back him up. They wouldn't just finance him for nothing. And it wasn't the king and queen. They just gave the go. It was the Morano Jews that financed him.
Yeah.
Moors, these were melanated people too that financed Columbus. So I mean, it's deep. They knew what was over here. They've been waiting to cross over. Uh, you know, they eventually were able to, and the whole name America and all that. They try to give it to them, but that's from over here, the Meriki, the Merikah. And we got the Tamaru, we got ancient Egypt, Tamaru, beloved land, Tamaru, and that's the ancient name for Egypt.
That's right. That's crazy too, man. I ain't even know that.
Yeah, Columbus was a Jew on the low.
Yeah, he was a Marrano, on the low. They call them Coptic secret Jews.
Mm, that's deep. All
Right.
right.
So that's why when you start watching these people start to pick up on Hebrew, it goes back to the same time period that the Moorish Science Temple of America was arose, and in fact the originator of the Hebrew or the commandment keepers is what they was originally called, actually taught the class that was seated with Moors and Hebrews. You see what I'm saying? They were simultaneously teaching both class,
Uh,
both groups of people. That's a fact.
uh.
Tell you, man. That's it right now. And you know, it says here, Coronado did not know it, but the refuge he and his men had taken was only a few miles from giant spears that will one day help solve a central mystery of the peoples of the Americas. All right. And right, it said, based on similarities in jade carvings, pottery, and ornaments, Ivar Zapp felt certain that the peoples who lived in the region of the stone spears of Costa Rica and the Guara navigators of Peru had shared a common navigational culture. The seafaring Diquares or Saiguares described to Columbus and the Guara navigators of Peru might have been the same people. The fact that it was in Costa Rica, not in Peru, that the Guaras were immortalized in stone pointed to Costa Rica as the likely center for the navigator priests. Ivar faced two major obstacles in proving his case. The first obstacle was the indigenous population of Costa Rica virtually disappeared within a few generations of the arrival of the Spanish.
Disappeared.
Much of Yeah, you see what I'm saying? It said the obstacle was that the indigenous population of Costa Rica virtually disappeared within a few generations of the arrival of the Spanish.
You know, we like if you guys don't know, they say that the first so-called Africans that came into America as slaves was in 1690, and it was from brought supposedly by Dutch people from straight from Africa. That's what they taught us all our life in school. And then I came to find out that these actually these so-called Negroes, these odd Negroes as they're described in these historical books, is some 20 odd Negroes came, uh, and they described that they were from the Caribbean. They were actually taken by privateers, which were pirates that the English had hired, the English crown, because they were at war with Spain and other countries, Portugal and other countries. So they would go raid and pirate Spanish ships. These Spanish ships were carrying these people right here that they're saying disappeared. You gotta understand, they playing
And,
games here.
and what did you use a word that I like that we're gonna have to touch on too. You said we will go raid the ships, right? And now since we done lost all knowledge and they done took it from us and now implementing it on us in a negative manner, when most people get arrested or if they doing a mass bust or they coming to incriminate you or indict you, they will raid your house now. They raid you early in the morning. Same thing they used to do to them when they came to our land. So
Exactly. Exactly. So they were raiding these ships, these pirates, right? And they were selling the cargo, which was human, which was you, which was the so-called Negro. They were enslaving the Aboriginals that supposedly disappeared out of all these regions. They say the Mayas disappeared. They say the Aztecs. They say everybody disappeared, right? So this ship actually was off the coast of Veracruz, Mexico, and that's where they got the so-called first African that they teach you about. You got to do the research. You got to read into these books. You got to read into where they really say these ships came from, because they're not coming from. It wasn't even a Dutch ship. They bought Dutch. They put a Dutch flag. They made a deal with the Dutch. They actually gave them a ship, a Dutch ship. They put their plate and name on it in Dutch, but it was actually English people. It was John Hawkins or somebody. Forgot, somebody famous. Um, that was once basically captains. It was all English people, and they were raiding these Spanish ships, right? And they was carrying aboriginals that they were ready to send to Hispaniola, Jamaica, wherever they were going, the colonies in the U.S. They had a big one in South Carolina. They had a big one there.
That's what's up, man.
sure did. That would be in Battery, right there in Charleston, South Carolina.
The land of the gullers and the gauges.
Word, man.
All right, so we ain't talking about like when I just want people to relate, because when you don't think like we're talking about Mexico, Costa Rica, Peru, that it doesn't relate to you. And you don't know where your ancestors came from. You couldn't, not always just in North America. You could have been Inca, you could have been, Olmec, whatever, you know, Arawak, Taino. So, it all relates to you.
That's right. These are just certain sites and certain people who have access to these areas without being pretty much harassed. You know what I'm saying? And that's why anytime somebody do discover anything in North America, it pretty much it has to go through so many people or go through so many hands, you know, for it to be established or put on the forefront. You know what I'm saying? So in these areas, South America, Mexico, it's so much land that hasn't been tampered with that people can just go out there and do their thing, man. And once they present it, there's nothing they can say about it. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I know that's another reason too, man. But it says, however, Ivar has found possible evidence that the more sophisticated navigational peoples of Costa Rica, on hearing of the Taro conquistadors, had simply sailed away into the Pacific, taking what written records they might have had with them, but they could not take the stone spears, of course. It says, what Columbus and Coronado failed to recognize was, in fact, the last vestige of the great navigational culture of the Americas, one that drew on its memories and lessons back to the golden age of navigation, into traces of man's greatest age on earth. What the American navigational cultures had retained knowledge of, and what Columbus almost rediscovered, was the remnants of the civilization that had given birth to the Sumerian, Egyptian, Basque, and Celtic cultures. While these other cultures had all but forgotten the continent across the sea, only the Phoenicians of Carthage visited there regularly. Okay, the reason why he said that, whether knowledge of the Americas was a Phoenician rediscovery or simply a continuation of use of trade routes long known to ancient sea peoples, is unknown. But there is strong evidence that the latter is closer to the truth, as Ivar realized that if his hypothesis that the spears were teaching instruments of a naval culture was to be tested, he would have to study a known naval culture, one where ancient traditions and techniques were still in use. Ivar sought the advice of archaeologists at the University of Costa Rica. They agreed that his theory was both startling and promising, but none seemed to know of a culture where ancient navigational techniques were still practiced. Then a friend gave Ivar a book that would profoundly influence and confirm his perspective on ancient man. It says the book was We the Navigators by David Lewis. In this book, Lewis presents a wealth of information on a Pacific-wide system of navigational learning, much of it still alive in the late 1960s when Lewis undertook to recreate the routes of ancient voyagers. Lewis voyaged over 13,000 nautical miles, sailing under the guidance of native islanders on native craft, using native star paths taught to his guides by their fathers and their fathers' fathers. Okay? Without benefit of any modern navigational equipment or techniques, Lewis and his island mentors never once failed to reach their often distant intended landfall. Okay. As Lewis exploits primarily accomplished in outrigger canoes or riveting. Hold on, I go back up to that. Let y'all look at that. Yet on reading Lewis records were what first caught Ivar's eye was the description of sighting stones. Although Lewis sources spoke of many stone astronomical gardens throughout the Pacific, Lewis was only able to report personally on stones on Niawa Falls, Ao, and Tonga, and on Butari Tari and Arorai, respectively, the northernmost and southernmost of the Gilbert Islands. The Gilbertese call the unusual configuration of stones that stand near the northwestern point of Aurora Te Atibu ni Barau, the stones for voyaging. First mapped by Captain E.V. Ward in 1946 when there were 13 stones. There are now 8. They were described as flat slabs of coral about 5 feet by 4 feet and about 6 inches thick, set on edge and secured by paving. Lewis describes the voyaging stones of Aurora as mostly grouped in threes in the manner shown. It's going to show, I look up at it, to indicate the bearings of islands in the southern Gilberts and Banamba. Lewis adds sighting stone seems to have been used to align canoes on taking departure in the same manner as natural landmarks, and probably also for recording and teaching star courses. So evidently these stones had either certain things on them that you could chart from the skies. So, or just on land, period. And they're just going in, man, about these stones and letting you know that, right now is they're basically saying these stones are some represent some of the most ancient, if not the most ancient navigational system on this land, on the planet. So in fact, let me go back up. I forgot about the pictures. Um Showing you the lines, basically some more lines of where the stones are at. And Aurora, Gilbert Islands, showing you the directional sites. Let's zoom in a little bit. And then you got right here showing you even more over in New Guinea and Melanesia. So this is more on the Pacific side. Showing you more of the Pacific side. So I'm gonna get in a little bit more. Y'all bear with me. I'm gonna
Yeah.
scroll down right here, right quick. This page is Horizon Stars. By steering toward horizon stars at the proper hour, Polynesians always knew the course to follow. After the English, Dutch, and German authorities had banned inter-island navigation, this often meant a departure after midnight. But this was no problem for a Polynesian seeking cigarettes or whiskey. They knew the rising and setting of all the major constellations and knew they could follow the heavenly trek of the stars to their destination. Early Hindu and Egyptian observations and hieroglyphs were also related to horizon stars. The Egyptian hieroglyph for horizon is the sun rising between two mountains. Phoenician sighting instruments for navigation were similarly expressed. Early Hindu and Egyptian observations and hieroglyphs were also related to horizon stars. The Egyptian hieroglyph for horizon is the sun rising between two mountains. Phoenician sighting instruments for navigation were simply expressed. So he must have repeated that part again by accident. But this is a picture shows how they seen some of the constellations. Just a little depiction or whatever.
The Disney movie Wanda. That's all I can think about when you just read that.
Oh, word.
Far
How
as,
about
far as them navigating, how she used to put her hand up in the L shape towards the North Star.
that's right.
Yeah. I mean, they're copying everything.
Everything.
Okay. Let me get down here right quick. This right here is an
So you see
old.
at the bottom that it's interesting that they talk about the Phoenicians a lot. Just wanted to emphasize that, you know. I mean, you gotta
Yeah.
understand.
They know the most, the Phoenicians was here. This right here is a repeated theme throughout Mesoamerica. It's Atlantean figures holding up the heavens. It says Homer placed the columns on which Atlas supported the heavens far out in the Atlantic. Plato said that Atlas was a son of Poseidon. whose domain was across the what could truly be called ocean. Later, classical Greeks, for no apparent reason, placed Atlantis in North Africa, and 19th century theorists placed it in the nearby North Atlantic. The earlier version is confirmed by the predominance of Atlantean figures in the Americas.
Yeah, that's interesting because we got the whole mythology of Poseidon and Atlas and his 10 sons. That was the 10 kings of Atlantis, and they relating a lot, Atlas and a lot of mythology. And if you read a lot of this, if you read about Thoth, they relate Atlas to Thoth a lot. They, Thoth himself says in the Emerald Tablets that he's an Atlantean, that he came from Atlantis. So Thoth was American. You know what I mean? If you look at ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic and mythology and inscriptions, they all talk about being a Westerner from a foreign land, from the West, the far distant land West. And he's one of the oldest gods. And if you saw my Anubis video, it is Anubis. Anubis is one of the oldest gods as well. And Anubis is over here in Mexico, in Atlantis / Atlantis, right? So this is correlating with that. So there's a lot of information there we got to put together. We see a broader picture. When we're not talking about Atlanteans, they're just talking about you. That's why they call you Atlanteans. They're calling you Atlantean. Some were doing some shit. Others were doing other things. They classified all of y'all as Atlanteans. But there were some crazy ones doing some crazy things, and something happened, and they had to keep it moving, just like Top says. He had to pack up, and go to North Africa, right where he says right here, and says, "Oh, they put it in North Africa for some reason." That's because the hijack went over there.
Right, you're right.
Hold on, my fault.
In the mythology about Osiris, he speaks about the Hall of Amenta, being in the West. And then all the gods, you can find all the gods in the West. So that will be the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So you're just vibing, we're just vibing and chilling, and we're just trying to, spread the message and connect and build. We're trying to just educate everyone. If some of you might find it hard to have access to these books and this information, putting it all together like that, we like what we're doing. We're trying to, we're trying to be free. We want everybody to be in a higher level, vibe up in a different way, know how deep this is, man. And it's not about mythology, it's not about mystery or conspiracy. It's not, those are just words they throw and create just to throw you off. And it's all relating here. I think, go ahead.
Oh yeah, man, you already know, man. Shoot. So I say, we like to read, so it's nothing to us, man. They even got a picture of the Maltese cross right here. It says have been described in the Chilam Balam, depicted as describing the cardinal directions in the Mayan Codex of Madrid.
Yep.
And inscribed in stone in the Americas for at least 16 centuries before Columbus. So
I'm glad you got into that, man, because I wanted to show something on that. And it's actually talks about the same thing. We're talking about Atlantis still, something I'm working on. But yeah, the cross is all over here. I just want to give you an example of that. That's cool.
Another hijack. That's nice.
Oh, yeah.
Applause.
That's good.
Yeah, let me share my screen real quick.
All right.
All right. Hold on, I lost the window. My fault. Keep talking real quick.
Oh, you good, bro? You good, man? Y'all already know.
Yeah,
Everybody
so
enjoying it, man.
Yeah, everybody. I hope everybody enjoying it. Like I said, we touching on, a lot of the things that you hear people might make claims. Yo, this is Atlantis. We know where Atlantis is. We getting into all the documented books that we can find that's describing and depicting and analyzing where Atlantis is and where it's always gonna be. You can't move Earth, man. Can't move this large bodies of Earth like that. So we gotta understand that, we putting in work trying to open your minds up to a few things. Show y'all the truth, man. Y'all are the great ones.
Yeah,
You are the first one to rise out the water. This is the grandmother land.
can y'all see?
Yeah,
Yep.
you on.
All right, this is the same book, Atlantis, the Antediluvian World. It's gonna get into the cross and the whole Garden of Eden thing. I just want you guys to, so we can talk about that too, because you actually got into it, so that's good.
The Garden of Eden. There we go again. The Garden of Eden was in America. So we already read that when Columbus reached the Orinoco River, he said that this river had to be coming down from the earthly terrestrial paradise, right? The Garden of Eden, right? So now I want you to look at this next paragraph. It says, "In the great ditch surrounding the whole land like a circle, and into which streams flowed down from the mountains." All right, flowed down from mountains. All right, so we know that Orinoco, the source of it is Mount Roraima, right? A mountain, so-called mountain, tree stump, right? Ancient giant tree. If you go Google it, Mount Roraima, you know, it's definitely one of those ancient trees, right? So this ancient tree now it flows down at the source of the Orinoco and Amazon River, right? So it says here that again, in the great ditch around the whole land like a circle, and into which streams flow down from the mountains, we probably see the original of the four rivers of paradise and the emblem of the cross, surrounded by a circle, which, as we will show hereafter, was from the earliest pre Christian ages accepted as the emblem of the Garden of Eden.
Cross.
Again, the cross, X marks the spot, right? Garden of Eden was, or the energy point, the vortexes of the earth, the natural grid it has, right? Continuing, among the earliest known types is the cruz ansata, vulgarly called the key of the Nile, because of its being found sculptured or otherwise represented so frequently upon Egyptian and Coptic monuments. It has, however, a very much older and more sacred signification than this. So they're talking about that the Ankh, right? That's why they call it the key of the Nile. It says vulgarly. It's actually found, and it's much older than what is found in Egypt,
Much
right?
older.
Egypt of today.
Much older.
It says it was the symbol of symbols, the mythical Tao, the hidden wisdom, not only of the ancient Egyptians, but also the Chaldeans, Phoenicians, Mexicans, Peruvians, and of every other ancient people commemorated in history in either hemisphere, and is formed very similarly to our letter T, with a roundlet or oval placed immediately above it. All right. So talking about that this was a symbol for most of the ancient peoples, right? And the letter T wanted to show you basically the letters in Paleo Hebrew in the first row, uh, the cross, right? Or as they call it, the Ta. Fixed. It says meaning mark, a mark, right? A sign, a signal, a monument, right? A waka, as we got in the last video, right? A monument, be a waka, right? A holy place, a mark, a sign. As we just read, the emblem of the Garden of Eden was the cross. So that was a mark for it, a sign, just like it says here in ancient Paleo Hebrew, right? And we get the X, right? What looks like a cross. And it became, again, it says modern Hebrew Tav, and in Latin T, as we just read. So the Hebrews also had the cross. This didn't start with Christianity. catacombs of Egypt. So this type likewise abounds in the ruined cities of Mexico and Central America, graven as well upon the most ancient cyclopean and polygonal walls as upon the more modern and perfect examples of masonry, and is displayed in an equally conspicuous manner upon the breast of innumerable bronze statuettes, which have been recently disinterred from the cemetery of Yuigalpa, an unknown antiquity in Nicaragua. When the Spanish missionaries first set foot upon the soil of America in the 15th century, they were amazed to find the cross was a devoutly worshipped by the Red Indians as by themselves, and were in doubt whether to ascribe the fact to the pious labors of St. Thomas or to the cunning device of the evil one. The hallowed symbol challenged their attention on every hand and in almost every variety of form. It appeared on the bas reliefs of ruined and deserted, as well as on those of inhabited palaces, and was the most conspicuous ornament in the great temple of Cozumel, off the coast of Yucatan. According to particular locality and the purpose which it served, it was formed of various materials, of marble and gypsum, in the open spaces of cities, and by the wayside of wood in the teocallis, or chapels on pyramidal summits, and in subterranean sanctuaries, and on emerald or jasper in the palaces of kings and nobles. How it comes that the sign of the cross has thus been reverenced from the highest antiquity by the races of the Old and the New Worlds, we learn that it is the reminiscence of the Garden of Eden, in other words, of Atlantis.
Atlantis.
Professor Harvick says, all these and similar traditions are but mocking satires of the old Hebrew story. So he sees it in that perspective. I actually see it the other way around. You know, it started with an aboriginal truth, right? And then it became religion and Hebrew words like Hebrew. One from the other side, which Hebrew means Iber, one from the other side. It's not a religion. You understand what I'm saying? Continues as jarred and broken notes of the same strain. Intimate how in the background of man's vision lay a paradise of holy joy, a paradise secured from every kind of profanation and made inaccessible to the guilty, a paradise full of objects that were calculated to the delight of the senses and to elevate the mind, a paradise that granted to its tenant rich and rare immunities, and that fed with its perennial streams the tree of life and immortality. Again, the tree of life, the cross. Continuing, not only to
All right, all right, all right. So yeah, that was just a little sneak peek of what I'm working on from the next video, but it correlates with what you were just getting into. So I just wanted to show that. All right. So we can see the cross as a symbol that was anciently known here. You know, it wasn't a Christian thing. It doesn't just mean religion. It has a very deep meaning, especially when it talks about energy and ley lines and all that, and sacred places. Like when you see a map, right? Pirate Treasure Island, you see the X marks the spot. They were always referencing the Garden of Eden, the paradise. That's the true treasure. We're not talking about gold. They always got you thinking gold, but the true treasure, true wealth, you know, it's in the land, the soil, with the fruits, the food, the fish, everything you have, not in the minerals, you know, not just the gold. We're talking about terrestrial paradise. We're talking about that in Africa, right? And I'm gonna keep talking since nobody tells us. In Africa, we got 600 out of, let me see, 640, right, food crops, and out of those 640, 600 of them originate in America.
Right. And where can the people go find that out? Just to drop the source, just so we can have that on standby, because that is a fact. You know what I'm saying? And go ahead and drop that where we can read that and read up on it.
In my actually, all right. So it's in my from Aboriginal American to African American Part 4. It's right there. I talk about it. I show the book and everything where it's coming from. You know, this is research done. You know, I mean, just if anybody wants to go ahead and verify, go ahead. You got 640 food crops to go ahead and study. And you're gonna end up right here in America. We're talking about terrestrial paradise. We're talking about Kemet means rich soil. It doesn't mean a specific place. We're talking about we got rich soil. When Columbus got to Haiti, he describes, man, how, and not just Columbus, a lot of people, when they got to Hispaniola, they're like, man, all these trees, all these fruit trees, this has to be near the Garden of Eden. That's what Columbus went to Venezuela, and we got to Orinoco. He said this has to be coming from the terrestrial paradise, the Orinoco River. And that comes from Mount Roraima. And we're talking about the Amazon, we're talking about, a lot of things grow there,
And that's right, man. So yeah, man. I know we dropped flame tonight, and this ain't, we ain't done. We gonna keep it going. This is just a part one to the Atlantis in America. You know what I'm saying? Or Atlantis is America. Atlantis was America and always will be. So yeah, well, this is just part one, and different versions and different angles that we're gonna try to open you guys up to realizing the truth on. So yeah, man. Salute to the big bro Jaguar for letting us on this panel. Much bliss to you, brother. And man, just keep doing your thing, man.
Yeah. Hey, peace. Peace. Yep. Peace. Peace, fellas. How y'all doing, man? Jaguar, Curveo.
Peace.
We got Enigma on here. Yeah, Aboriginal Power. Peace, y'all. How y'all doing, man? Hey, man, great book, man. I haven't had a chance to read it, man, but just listening to what you guys are saying, man, it's definitely gonna be a good read. I wanted to point out something though. A lot of times, even when we're reading stuff like this, right? They talk about Mesoamerica, things of that nature, whatever, right? And a lot of times, there's even, I know you guys have pointed it out, but they're talking about Phoenicians. I got air quotes over here. Came here, but remember, we're talking about out of America, where everything went there. So they got us thinking opposite of the way it's supposed to be. So like in reverse, yes. You know what I'm saying? So I just wanted to throw that out there, whatever. And it was also scientifically called Egypto-America before it was called Mesoamerica, which means mixed America. So I think that was just interesting to point out. Great job, Just appreciate it. Go.
Straight up, they flipped everything. So yeah, exactly. We have our orientation perspective. That's what we have to, get correct again. And yeah, exactly, man. So we're coming out of here. That's where the research is leading. And yeah, exactly. Even in geology, like if you guys study of this famous guy called Agassiz, Louis Agassiz. He's one of the most famous geologists that existed so far, and he created a lot of academies and everything. But since he went against the whole Darwinism thing, he didn't come out in the textbook, so we don't know about him. But he straight up says that America is the old world. It has the land, at least, the geology. He said in his writings that he can't prove that first inhabitants, but he says definitely the land was one of the first that came out of the waters, while Europe and the other side was still islands. So I mean, we're talking about different different way that the Earth looked before. We're not just talking about look how it looks now, and a little piece fell off. It could have been totally different. So.
Right. And yeah, man, we gotta dodge these hijacks, and man, that's what we trying to explain to the people that study Mesopotamian culture, and the artifacts that they have conjured up don't even fit the Mesopotamian narrative. You see what I'm saying? It's totally out the blue. It has no evolving within that land. It just boom. What you got? This evidence, this. And what we trying to say is we found more significant and just as relevant what we will call Mesopotamian artifacts here. And it's dated here. You know what I'm saying? Dated at a certain date that predates certain Mesoamerica artifacts as well. You know what I'm saying? Even dealing with clay tablets and different clay tablets of that matter. That's depicted sperm cells and gene splicing. You know what I'm saying? You hear about this in Mesopotamian culture, but this shit was found right here in America. Right here.
Exactly, man. That whole we even got a Mesopotamia right in Argentina, and there's actually in Bolivia, right in Tiwanaku, in the plains of Tiwanaku, they found like in the land you can see squares like from satellite. You can see like little like land like lots were split, but that's actually where the rivers and the water ran by those canals. And when they measured it and everything, it fits the exact same description of how Plato described the plains of Atlantis where they grew their crops. And the style, the measurement, everything exact. That's in you guys can read that. I believe it's in Bolivia, in Tiwanaku.
Mm.
Right.
Um,
And what I mean by that is like, hold on, let me screenshot something before we get ready to get out of here, man.
I mean, we got to talk about La Danta, man, definitely before you leave, man.
You know I got to. You know I got to talk about Ladanta. But look at these. Look at these depictions, right? And this is gold plated. It said gold sheets with
hold
holes
up.
for
Somebody
hanging
gotta
it.
share the screen. Somebody gotta share the screen to you. You ain't popping.
Okay. I don't know what it is.
There you go. You good.
Yeah, I got it now. Okay, go ahead.
And you think these zoo types, right? What you see in Egypt with the bird head on the man, or the monkey head, or the goddamn cow head, excuse my French. But this is what you see depicted here in a similar ways. You see part human, part animal. And what it's talking about is, you know, the Atlanteans, right? Or the Americans, or the Amerindians, right? Or the Antanchan, or the Niji, the ancient Niji, had developed gene reconstructing methods in welding uh pretty much animals and goddamn humans together. I'm talking about
Mm.
nervous, I'm
This
talking
is
about nervous systems and everything,
You know
man.
what they
So
put me in the mind of?
this is
That movie called The Island, Dr. Monroe. As far as you talking about the creature like stuff, the man beast type switch.
yeah. So this is one of those things that manifest destiny tells you this is savage. This is not real. This doesn't go on officially on the history. So this is actually Father Crispy's collection. Again, this was found in caves in the Amazon. And the Indians said that they took these sheets, these gold sheets, off the wall. This was the wallpaper on the walls. That they had to take them piece by piece off the wall. And a lot of the masons and stuff, they say this is fake. This is fake. But these are made from solid gold. It's a lot of work to make a fake. It's a lot of work for a couple of dollars or whatever sell. And the Indians that lived there during the time, some of the Mongol Indians and tribes, the Siberians that were there, they didn't have the type of knowledge to work this metal like that. It's more ancient, and so I mean, I mean his stuff when he died, they grabbed it up and sealed it in a bank, and that's where it's sitting right now. But he had all this proof right there of Assyrian, Egyptian, Roman, all this type of things we see on that side over here, the helmets, everything.
yeah, man. So
Yeah,
we ain't even got started. I just want to give another glimpse on the Lost Outpost of Atlantis book. And like I
yeah.
said, it's three different books that we're gonna be going into simultaneously. We got the Lost Outpost of Atlantis, we got Atlantis in America, and we got Atlantis in the antediluvians. So yeah, man, we just gonna be trying to break this thing down and try to get y'all much proof as possible, you guys.
So far, all three books are saying, they're talking about here. They're not talking about no mythical land.
Right. They ain't talking about nothing different. They're all giving you a strategic location on where they talking about, which is the Americas.
That's right. And that's why, that's why we starting off like this, man. This is really like a little introduction because in the next chapter, man, he's gonna get more into how his perspective of science is compared to what the mass society of science, believe in. And that's why I'm gonna end it off with this little last paragraph so that way maybe tomorrow or Monday, if we can get everybody together again on here, man, we can get right back into it, man. Hopefully everybody enjoyed it and wouldn't mind getting back into it. So I'm gonna read this little last paragraph right quick, and then we're gonna close out, man. It says here, Ivar confronted established science with his new perspective on the spears in Costa Rica. They again responded that the spears had been constructed by Cortegas, the earliest known people of Costa Rica. Ivar objected that the spears had been found, even by traditional archaeologists, to be too sophisticated to have been built by any known cultures of the region. Ivar insisted that they must relate to the oldest known culture of Mesoamerica, the Olmecs, and that they must date back to an age when megalithic structures were being built throughout the world. The establishment answer was simply put, do not bother establish theory with out of context information. Man, that's crazy. Instead, Ivar enlisted the aid of writer George Erickson. Together, they began a determined search for mountain evidence that would upset accepted science and establish a new paradigm, one that would include the enigmas of the Americas. And this is what he really stands on. He describes a lot of things in other people's narrative first, so you can really see, their side of the story compared to his. So as we go along, you're gonna see how he relates all the information to the indigenous, aborigine, original people of the Americas. You know what I'm saying? So you gotta bear with him with a few words, that he used. And most of the time it's usually when he referring to what other people are saying, because he get right down and tell you that it was aborigines who was doing all these ancient astonishments and establishments. You know what I'm saying? So I wanted to make sure y'all at least got that before we left chapter 2. It gets right into the pagan paradigm, a conspiracy of ignorance. And he's going to go in hard on the science societies. So please tune back in, y'all, when we build up for that, man. Like I said, could be tomorrow or Monday. It's going to be soon because it's really already ready. So,
Right.
I just want to say
Go
appreciate
ahead, hit
y'all,
that
brothers, man.
notification bell.
Word.
Right.
Notification bell.
Hit that like.
Y'all ain't gonna wanna miss this chapter 2. I'm telling you.
Right. That's a fact. And I want to close out. I want to close out with a little jam before we leave out. I'll leave them with a nice little positive song, man.
Word, that'll work.
Cool.
Yeah, man. So everybody, peace.
Thank y'all for sharing with us tonight. Peace, panel.
All right,
Peace,
yo.
fam.
Shabbat shalom, peaceful Saturday, blessed Saturday, blessed night. Thanks for tuning in. You're gonna be mad smart.
Yeah, he got the squad with him, and the message gon' live when our bodies finish like, oh man, y'all got a problem on y'all hands. What is the revolution? We at war, so my brothers ready, we all in. They like, never let them niggas know that we tryna keep them in the hole. People don't never tell them niggas kings and the queens and the gods and the throne. That's a no-no, cause that's gonna make them feel strong. And we ain't ready for the power that the niggas got together like, nah, really nah. I would say you never saw it coming, but I know you snakes have seen it coming. And it's something like, who that waking niggas up? Y'all don't fall time up the thumb, gotta love them, yeah, that's the chief. We the soldiers in the streets, so get acquainted with the team. You all in your feelings, you demons, I know it, cause these are movements you don't have to see. It's y'all scared of my power. But ain't that, you don't like that, like that. With my power, that top spot that you sitting in, yeah, we know that's ours. So on that, yeah, that throne, that's ours. The power that we're sitting on, our power we were sleeping on. Yeah, you knew we had it all along. So right now we know. I was mad, I could be rocking with the chopper. I could. Omega Evers know the king. Give me a without a day, call the doctor. Martin Luther, this the revolution. The Tupac lips was the doctrine. You probably never hear my words, most likely conspired just to pop me. The power I know that it's God like. Oh, why the good, yeah, that's God right. Due to the evil who y'all like. Pretty brother is ready for us. Baltimore like the cannon north. The root of ignorant is ignored. Who could justify what we ride for? The same land that we dying for. Forget the news, use the eyes more. You the taxidermists, we the animals. We seen it coming, I ain't panic though. Black with time till you cantaloupe. Are you the lion or are you the antelope? I know it's there, I can smell it. What the cop said, now you're yelling. Ain't no guns or drugs in the car, brother. Trying to make it home by 11. I ain't even lying to you. You a rap star, what's a fine to you? Take your chains, what's a shine to you? If I lock you up, what's a mind to you? Everything serving is black skin. Let me ask, what's my mind to you? Cause I ain't hurting nobody. Behind the badge, y'all hiding. And I know that you're scared of my power. And you hate that, you don't like that, like the hell with my power. That top spot that you sitting in, yeah, we know that's ours. So we own that, yeah, we want that, yeah, that throne, that's ours. Oh, the power that we're sitting on, the power we've been sleeping on.
I knew we had it all along.
Trying to get a social engineering. Keep her divided and keep her distracted, cause y'all know together we seeking vengeance. Who does that talk when y'all sit and listen? Y'all gon' get the trip, get the crib. Y'all used to them pussy for niggas, but they ain't no pussy in us. That's the women. We the men they try and break down, make us scared of them, knock our faith down. Make our women disrespect us, cause she know if they can break us, they can break it down. But not this ain't the type of generation, it's that generation that's gonna get it done. We was born for this day and age, silly. We the same jury that's gonna hang around. There's something about us. Oh, you notice he can't control it. They say that we rebels and problem children, cause we just won't listen to Uncle Ruckus. Miss me with that shit, we train to go like a militia. We on a mission, moving around. If you not with it, this business ain't got no hard feelings. You know. I just ain't got no time for pussy cats scared of my vision. It's like insanity to a coward. Yeah, my teacher, he told me about it. I'm so ready for this venture. I signed up for this ready description. They say, you know, you probably die, right? I said, put me on the list. I know that y'all scared of my power. And you hate that, you don't like that, like the hell with my power. And that top spot that you sitting in, we know that's ours. So we own that, yeah, we want that, yeah, that throne, that's
It's
ours.
our
Oh, the power that we're sitting on, a power we've been sleeping on. You knew we had it all along. So now it's on.
Peace.